United Nations Entity for Gender Equality and the Empowerment of Women, also known as UN Women, is a United Nations entity working for gender equality and the empowerment of women. The organization continues to point out their invaluable contribution to the development of their community and nations. They say that the crucial role of ensuring the sustainability of rural households and communities' overall well-being is increasingly being recognized. However, UN Women also points out that women, in particular women in rural areas, are continuing to face significant discrimination when it comes to land and livestock ownership, equal pay, participation in decision-making entities, and access to resources and credit. On this week's episode of Our Voices, we are looking at the day-to-day life and challenges and success stories as well of rural women in parts of Africa. We are also examining some of the programs that assist them in fulfilling their roles as caregivers and agents of development. Hi, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Orion Itangishaka, and this is Our Voices. I'm joined by my co-host Seminish Yakoye. Hello, Seminish.
Hello.
And Amina Eliu is out today, but in for her is our colleague Palestine Iman from the Somali Service. Thank you for being with us,
You're welcome.
Palestine.
Thanks for having me.
Now, let's begin our program by hearing from you. I believe most of us were born in cities on the continent, and also you travel there often and you do reporting sometimes as well. What do you think, what comes to your mind when you think about a rural woman?
Hardworking. As you know, African rural women work very hard, and according to World Bank, women contribute close to 40% crop production related labors. On top of that, they handle the house chores, raising the kids. They have a lot of responsibility. You know, in here, we discuss, we say house chores is a lot for us. We do a lot. But imagine these women, they have to start everything from the scratch. They don't have water, electricity, and all other facilities we have here. So they have that, and they're doing the farming and everything. So
and they do this hard work. I think it's despite all the challenge they have, and in my mind what comes is environmental challenge, because rural life is highly intertwined with nature, and unfortunately nature is affected by climate change.
Definitely, I agree. And when I think about them, I think about the word endurance, because it seems that they're enduring a lot.
Yeah, a lot.
And you have to travel a lot to get a water.
That's right.
And then you have to carry on your head, on your back. Yes,
and they do it with a smile on their faces for the most part.
Exactly.
Right. Now, for further discussion, we'll welcome Mrs. Doreen Abane. She's in Accra, Ghana right now, and she holds a degree in renewable natural resources and has served with Tree Aid as field assistant since 2020. Currently, she is supporting them with the start of the Ghana Shea Parkland Emission Reduction Project in Yendi. Mrs. Abane, thank you so much for being with us. Okay, but before we discuss some of the experiences that Mrs. Abane has working with Tree Aid, let's look at a story, a fantastic story of a woman in rural Tanzania. You know that millions of rural women worldwide play an essential role in society. On October 15th of 2022 was International Day of Rural Women, a day dedicated to the millions of women living in remote rural places. Now, VOA Charles Kombe visits Neema Sultan in the rural village of Kazimzungwi in Pwani region of Tanzania and looks at her daily challenges.
A 55-year-old Neema Sultan has lived in this village for 30 years. Like a majority of women in rural Tanzania, she carries the burdens of everyday life. Neema is in charge of taking care of the family. She cooks and collects firewood. In Tanzania, over 55 million people are without clean cooking services. That is 85% of the population that still depends on solid biomass fuels for cooking. On this day, Neema leaves her house and walks for 10 kilometers to collect firewood. She has to contend with danger from snakes and other wild animals that are common here.
Sometimes I leave while my kids are still sleeping. When we get back, I prepare breakfast and lunch. After lunch, I go to fetch water from the well. Water is a challenge here. Sometimes we return home late at night, and worse enough, we have been restricted by the owner to only fetch 2 buckets of water only due to the shortage of water.
A recent statement from UN Women, a United Nations entity for gender equality and the empowerment of women, says rural women face a high cost of living crisis. The crisis stops them from accessing modern energy and leads to the use of unhealthy biomass for cooking and heating, putting them at greater risk of death from household air pollution. On the other hand, a shortage of food poses a challenge to many rural women like Neema due to climate change.
Mboga zinapatikana lakini kwa sasa hivi haziwezi kupatikana kutokana na mvua hamna.
Currently, vegetables and fruits are not available as they used to due to lack of rain. When the rain starts, I hope many fruits such as passion, jackfruits, and oranges will be many here. We also grow foods like cassava and vegetables, and now we have already prepared our farms. What we are only waiting for is the rain.
Despite a load of work daily, Neema also helps her husband build another house at their compound. Among the things she is very proud of is greater social cohesion in rural areas. This allows for the village dwellers rely on friends and neighbors for help when needed, something that is hardly done in the city.
We live socially and we help each other when we have certain challenges. For instance, when your neighbor lacks food and you have some in your house, you help them with flour, sugar, tomatoes, and the like. Currently, the situation is not that good, but we live according to the environment.
Neema says overall, her village life is fulfilling as she enjoys it with her family and neighbors as they eat and share a whatever little harvest she gets from her farm. Charles Kombe for VOA News in Pwani, Tanzania.
Thank you so much, Charles Kombe, for that beautiful story from Tanzania. Now, as we've said, we got to be joined by Mrs. Doreen, in Ghana, who has been working with Tree Aid. Tree Aid is a nonprofit, non-governmental organization that focuses on working with people in the Sahel region of Africa to tackle poverty and the effects of climate change by growing trees. And also, of course, improving people's income. Mrs. Doreen, thank you so much for being with us. We just recently celebrated the International Day for Rural Women. How does Tree Aid celebrate such a day? What things do you highlight as an organization?
When it comes to celebrating rural women, we work with them throughout our project. So this day is not really a very big day for us, but we celebrate their journeys, how far they've come with us throughout their journey through the beginning of the project until now. So this year, actually, we haven't done anything in particular, but we have celebrations on the International Women's Day, where we celebrate them. So we have been working with them through the community and then through our intervention. So we celebrate their journeys, their capacity buildings we done with them. In terms of farming, how far they have come with that. So it's actually not a very big day for us, but we celebrate them throughout our
Ms. Abane, unfortunately, many reports indicate that rural women are disproportionately affected by climate change. So how much has it altered or affected their day-to-day life?
It has affected them in the sense that when it comes to the household, the women are center. When it comes to house chores, taking care of the house, taking care of children, taking care of everything, even including farm work. So with climate change, you realize that there are issues of water, where they have to walk long distance to get water for the household, where they have to walk long distances to get firewood, and then they still have to come to the house and still perform their tasks. wives and mothers. So it has affected them in various ways.
Mrs. Doreen, how the rural women handle the emergency health situations like childbirth or if they get sick?
In Ghana, we have what we call chief compound, mostly in all communities. And the communities where they don't have that, let's say in the next 5 communities, you find a compound, which is a small clinic where if there's not even a doctor, there's a nurse or there's a health officer there to help them. So, but if they have serious case, then they're referred to the big hospitals in the city for treatment.
And Ms. Haban, I have another question for you. Despite all these challenges we talked about, climate change or not inadequate health services, these women still continue to produce agricultural products either for local consumption or even for export, right? So yes. How valuable are they for the economy? Because 80% of women in Africa live in rural areas according to reports. So how valuable are they for the community, the economy of the community they live in?
They are very valuable because even currently the project I'm working on that has to do with specifically share, and through the nursery work for them, they help us raise seedlings, they help us to plant things, and then we also take them through trainings on how to add value. They share, and then we can export, and then also sell some at the local level to make income. So they are very valuable because even in the agricultural activities they undertake, when you get to the farm, the majority of them are women. I mean the labor force. Majority of them are women. Those that do most of the work on the farms.
Tree Aid, Mrs. Abane, does help with, as we've said before, their economic empowerment. Can you tell us one of the projects that is helping them to empower them economically? Perhaps it's a project that could be replicated in different parts on the continent.
There's one example is a project. The name of the project is GRACE, and that's an acronym. That is Ghana Rural Agriculture and Cashew Enterprise. With this project, it was a composite project. It combined, we had cashew, we had legume, we had honey, and then we had a cashew apple processor. And with this project, we assisted the farmers with cashew seed. Hello?
Yes. Yes, we can hear you.
We assisted farmers with cashew seedlings where they planted. And in the plantations, they were also assisted with beehives where they install in the farms to get honey. So they harvest honey in the cashew plantations. And then in the beginning, when the cashew seedlings they are assisted with legume, where they intercrop with the cashew, and all this help them get income. And aside that, initially, the cashew apple didn't really utilize. It was the nut that was more like the complication of the nut. And then when you get to most of the farms, the apples are just thrown away. So what we did was to train them on value addition of the cashew apple. So they process them into juice, jam, powder, and then other products where they sell and then get income. In addition to what they get from the honey and then even the cashew plantation.
That's interesting, and it definitely can be replicated to other parts of the continent as well. We are talking to Ms. Doreen Abane, and stay with us for more of your input. But for our audience, it's time for a break. When we return, we will look at some of the challenges that rural women face, such as religion and culture, and how an organization like Tree Aid comes in to assist. Stay with us.
The search is on for Africa's best and brightest minds in finance, cybersecurity, technology, and anything digital.
making social impact through cutting-edge technologies, innovation, and creativity in Africa. Out of 17,000 candidates from 50 countries in North, Central, East, West, and Southern Africa, only 3 will be selected from the top 10 continental finalists from Egypt, Nigeria, Ghana, Zimbabwe, Kenya, and Cameroon. Join the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and its prestigious partners, including the Voice of America, when the 3 finalists are featured at the U.S. Africa Leaders Summit in December 2022 in Washington. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. You are watching Our Voices. We are discussing the life of rural women in rural settings. With us on Skype is Ms. Doreen Abane. She has been working with Tree Aid, an international development organization in Sahel region in Africa, to tackle poverty and the effects of climate change by growing trees, improving people's income. There are some deep challenges among the many that rural women have as they take care of their families. One such challenge is climate change, as we discussed earlier, but other challenges are religion and culture that often keep rural women from advancing in society. In Afghanistan, many women who lost jobs after the Taliban seized power in the country are now working to support their families by running home business. That's what Shataba Jalal is doing, and her business requires a very special skill. Safullah Ahmedzai has the story narrated by Anbol.
The only way Shataba Jalal can help support her family is to run a business in her home.
The Taliban are the reason that we are staying home. We can't work outdoors. They won't even let us walk on the streets without a male family member with us. Since I'm forced to stay home, I thought let's start a silkworm farm in my home with my husband. We bought silkworms and now raising them.
Shataba lives in the western Afghan province of Herat. The silkworms she and her husband raise at their house produce silk, which they sell in the local market. But the money they make is much less than the $300 a month Shataba earned at her job before the Taliban takeover. The silkworm business will bring in less than $800 a year, she says, but at least she has a way to make money.
A woman who has no male member of the family or a single woman, how do they survive? They had jobs as teachers in schools or public service. Now nothing.
Shataba, who is 27, has some college education and is a mother. Before the Taliban returned to power, she worked for non-governmental organizations in Afghanistan. Shataba hopes the international community will continue to press the Taliban to lift restrictions on women and reopen secondary schools to girls.
I personally wish to get my freedom back like I had in the past and to continue my activities.
If the Taliban refuses to lift their restrictions on girls' education and women's freedom to work and move around freely, Shataba says many Afghan women will be forced to leave the country. For Safiyullah Ahmadzai in Herat, Afghanistan, Ann Ball, VOA News.
Thank you so much, our colleagues Safiyullah and Ann Ball, for that story. I want to come to Mrs. Abane in a minute to see how Tree Aid can help women who have those barriers, those culture and political barriers. But I want to turn to Palestine first, our colleague from the Somali service. I know you've covered or worked on stories about rural women. And what has been your observation between rural women and city women in terms of culture and religion challenges or barriers?
And usually in rural area, they are more cultural and religious than the cities. That's the normal. So that's why the influence of the Islamists or extremists doesn't affect that much rural women. So mostly they focus the women education, working women, the dress code, and that exists in the city. So in that impact, I think rural area, they are safe. So, but it always focuses on the city.
Because it's a bit more modern and westernized.
Westernized, yeah. Okay. Because kind of the clothes they wear, working class, all that. Yeah.
It's interesting. I wouldn't think about it like that. I would think usually on the continent, most rural areas are more conservatives. Yeah. But yeah, and so it's interesting to know
when
that.
you look in Boko Haram and Al-Shabaab and ISIS, they all focus on the women education, working class women. So that doesn't exist in the rural area.
Which is what we saw in Afghanistan, right?
Yeah. I have a question for Ms. Doreen. We have been talking about challenges, but we just brought a positive aspect of being in rural. And I mean, they have a lot of valuable cultures, like, for example, knowledge about the herbal medicines or, the social fabric. So how can we strengthen or how can we promote these positive aspects of rural women?
The question again.
How can we promote the positive aspects of rural women, like, for example, the social fabric or some knowledge like herbal medicine they have?
Okay. With 3A, mostly what we do is before we start implementing the project, we find out what they are already doing or what the resources they have, and then how we can help them get more out of that. So as I said, in terms of that, mostly you look at the locality.
I think we're having a little bit of technical difficulties, but I think she's saying that, they focus on what's already there, what women are already doing to empower them. And I think that it's the best approach to look at exactly what are the women doing to circumvent or to overcome those barriers. I mean, it could be a simple...
The other benefit that the rural women have is the physical job they do. They're more healthy, they're more fit than the city women too. And they have everything fresh, like, from the tree. You have to slaughter in goat or chicken to have a meat. So fresh they have all that plus.
Yeah. And then the challenge they have, organizations like the 3Aid can empower them to how to tackle the sexual violence or other challenge they have.
Right.
Yeah, it is time for another break, but first, please share your thoughts on the contribution of rural women in your countries on our social media platforms. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Our handle is VOA Our Voices. We are also on WhatsApp. Our number is on your screen. When we come back, we have our Uncommon Voices segment.
From around the world. Let's go.
Welcome back. You are watching Our Voices. Here is what some women in rural area think about their lives in the villages.
What I love about living here is that I do not incur transport costs. Actually, I don't have to go anywhere to do shopping to restock my shop. Vendors usually pass by and sell to us at a cheaper price because they also don't incur transport costs to Nansana. Now I no longer have to use transport because I just call the retail shop and the commodities are delivered here at my shop. The major benefit I've gotten living in this place is that my children and I no longer lack food. We are also trying to do some farming sometimes, which helps us to get some food. Besides, Food here is cheap and I can easily harvest a bunch of matoke from my garden. Like you can see, I'm also able to get some beans from my garden.
There are definitely positive aspects of being in rural life. I mean, I saw some of the, stories, and also the Vox Pop. We just saw a woman with her children. I think as a mom, one of the things that I appreciate is spending more time with my children. And village women, it seems like they are constantly always with their children, and that's very valuable.
And for me, I think another valuable thing is that they are always with nature. They are with trees, with their agricultural products. They are outside. They deal with soil, and that's very valuable, I think.
Yeah, but there is other point, mostly young ones, the girls and the boys who always are the workforce in the rural area. Now they don't want to leave anymore. So they go into the city. So the mothers and the fathers and the small kids will stay behind the rural area. So I think for something is changing for the rural area life. For coming years, maybe we can see different life because everything is becoming now city. You see the video, they have a cell phone.
That's true. That's why for any country to develop, for any development agenda to succeed, it has to incorporate the rural woman.
That's right.
Yes, they have to be part of any global
She's
agenda.
definitely the brain of the communities oftentimes. And we want to really take the time to thank our guests, Mrs. Doreen Abane, who was with us. We're going to have to wrap it here and continue to ask you to go on our social media pages to comment on Everyday's show. And we're going to wrap it up here. This is Our Voices. We want to thank also Palestine Iman from the Somali Service. Hope to see you again. This is Our Voices. Until next time, I'm Oreni Tangishaka. Have a good day.